Hey friends, so I'll just get this back on the on something to watch for a little while. It's so we apologize for doing this on Christmas Day. We just woke up this morning and saw this thing by the Grayzone about Abigail Thorn, the trans woman who she recently came out in quotes as trans about, I don't know, 8 months ago.
She's the creator of PhilosophyTube.
Have you got your mic on, Dede?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's the creator of PhilosophyTube, which has a large following of about 1.8 million or something like that. It's got a pretty large following, and this isn't about, you know, I don't personally. I don't care if somebody's trans or, you know, if they're LGBT or whatever. If I see, you know, if I see something that looks like it is problematic and is highlighting someone and then attaching all kinds of nefarious motivations onto that particular person, and also where somebody like, for example, journalist Caleb Marpin, who is a patriotic, he calls himself a patriotic socialist, which to me is an oxymoron, but he's also often engages in culture war stuff. He's overtly transphobic. I've seen it for myself on his channel. That's why I stopped watching him. And I can give it an example of that, which I will later.
Considered a Nazbol.
Yeah, some people consider him
a national Bolshevik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
nationalist
there's
Bolshevik.
many references from the Grayzone, which is is an independent journalist outfit which has Max Blumenthal as the editor-in-chief. Max Blumenthal is a journalist who has done great journalism on imperialist stuff, but for my liking, he's taken some interesting turns, doing a lot of anti-vaxxer stuff, and we've covered that here. I'm not talking about I'm talking about dumping on the actual vaccine itself, which I think is really problematic in that the vaccine actually has been very effective in keeping people out of ICU. He sort of suggests to people that they should get monoclonal antibodies instead of getting a vaccine, and that costs $2,100. So he's suggesting everybody, no matter what financial situation they are, should get COVID and then get monoclonal antibodies instead of getting a free vaccine, that kind of thing. And he's also conflating mandates and passports and all that kind of, and lockdowns all together with that. So it's been a very problematic thing, and I'm not going to rehash that you can see our discussions about that. But you know, Abigail, anyway, we're going to talk about this article that the Grayzone put out, and we're also going to talk about BreadTube, and we're going to talk about Abigail Thorn's content in the past before she came out in quotes as trans, and then after she came out as trans, and see if there's really any you know, and see how much of a nefarious thing is going on with Abigail Thorn and her you know, her past and you know, sort of future content kind of thing, or, you know, present content. So anyway, but we might have a look at Jackson Hinkle now. Jackson Hinkle did a live stream today.
Which do that or the article first?
Oh, do you want to look at the article first, or
I
do
think
you want
it might be pertinent.
Okay, so you've read the article.
article.
You've read the article, Dede. I've looked at it quickly, but I haven't actually. I was listening to. Yeah, we were talking about some stuff. Anyway, so I'll have a look at. I'll put up the article here. So excuse me if it sort of suddenly goes into that eternal look that sometimes does. So I'll just flip this up. Oh, it doesn't seem to want to go up for me. Oh, there we go. Just hold on a second. I have to get the article. Okay, so I assume would that be on the screen, do you think? I guess.
Yes, I think it will be.
I don't see it there. Hang on.
There. It is now.
Is it? No, yep. It's on the screen.
It's on the screen. You need to go back to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
you have to be there for
Okay.
it to be on the screen.
Can I ask you a favor, Dede? Can you see that on the
Yes.
actual? Oh, it's on the actual.
When you are looking at
Oh,
it,
okay.
it's on
All
the
right.
screen.
Great.
When you're not,
Great.
it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah. As long as people can see it, that's the important thing. So let's have a look at this. Leak files. This is the name of the article dated 24th of December 2021 on the Grayzone by Clit Clarenberg and Max Blumenthal. So leak files expose serious IOPS veteran astroturfing BreadTube star to counter COVID restriction critics. Okay, so one of the reasons that it appears that Max Blumenthal has highlighted this is because it goes in keeping with the kind of rabidly anti-vaccine thing that he has going.
Yeah.
And she is not, as far as I know, an anti-vaxxer. I don't know what her position is on mandates or passports or anything like that. My personal position on mandates and passports is I think carrots and sticks. Carrots is much better than sticks. I don't think it's a good idea to enforce mandates on people or have passports. That passports can be very problematic. But I would probably, if I was a health worker, I mean, it would have been a no-brainer many decades ago, or even 10 years ago, for health workers to sort of just naturally want to take a vaccine if they're dealing with, they're dealing with patients that have immunosuppressed issues or whatever. You don't want to be spreading that to people. So I am very surprised that any health worker would be against having a vaccine. But so that is my position, and I think the vaccine is the empirical evidence is that it keeps people out of ICU, because of, most people that are in ICU, from what I understand to this point, is that most people that have had the vaccine don't end up in ICU or with severe disease. And I know that Omicron is a different variant to the Delta variant, and it looks like it may be coming to the end of the pandemic, because Omicron is seems
less
to
virulent.
Yes, it's less virulent. It's more contagious, but it's less virulent. So, but people that do have had the vaccine seem to have less symptoms. And it may be the case that people that haven't had the vaccine may have less symptoms. But up until this point, it's been pretty clear that people, who have the vaccine have not ended up. It's often the case they don't end up in ICU. So anyway, let's talk about this. You've read this, Dede. So what?
I can.
Shall we talk about BreadTube first? So that, because there seems to be this confusion in this article about BreadTube, that it contains people that it actually doesn't, and that's some sort of organization, which it isn't. So would you like to talk about BreadTube, Dede?
Sure. First, I'll just say that BreadTube has been kind of a target of Jackson Hinkle and Caleb Maupin and all these kind of guys.
Yeah.
Because they're quite popular leftists. And BreadTube,
and they're often trans or trans-friendly as well.
They're generally trans-friendly. They're not often trans, because the core BreadTube people that are usually mentioned are ContraPoints, who's trans, Philosophy Tube, who mostly hasn't been seen out as trans.
Whoops.
Lindsay Ellis and H. Bomber Guy. And sometimes people like Sean and T1J are included in that.
Yeah.
And BreadTube is kind of an open, it is, FD Signifier's done a really good video on this called Breaking Bread. It's a recent video where he talks about the fact in the evolution of YouTube, where initially it was a lot of little comedy sketches. It was a much more kind of like TikTok in a way, where people were doing these funny little things, or people were doing kind of journaling and that sort of thing. And then there were suddenly a more coherent essay type people who were creators on there. And a lot of them were from the kind of atheist group. But a lot of those people were grifting very strongly, or were going very strongly to the right. People like Ben Shapiro and Armored Skeptic and Sargon of Akkad and that sort of thing. They were very right-wing, anti-diversity,
And still
basically homophobic and kind of borderline racist or openly racist.
Yeah, misogynist.
Misogynist, very
Anti-Palestinian.
misogynist, and anti social justice warrior.
Yeah,
it was that
in
whole
quotes, yeah.
period where YouTube was very right wing and had a lot of content that was kind of pushing people in that right wing direction. At that point, YouTube looked very right wing, and then these people got on who were also very coherent and had good what do you call it? Where had good content, good skills as far as speaking, as far as delivering an ordered set of information, who were maybe funny, and that kind of thing. People like ContraPoints and PhilosophyTube, H-Bomber Guy, and that kind of stuff. There were a few of those people who were coming on and basically putting out content that was anti-fascist, generally anti-capitalist, and opposed to people like Jordan Peterson and Shapiro and those right-wing grifters.
Yeah.
And they were basically anti-fascists. And that became known in the on the mainstream media. People noticed that. They had a real impact on changing what YouTube was like, in the sense of presenting a counter-argument. People talked about them de-radicalizing, where the right-wing people were radicalizing people to the right. They were de-radicalizing them. And the media particularly picked up this term BreadTube from Kropotkin's, God, what's his name? Something of bread. What's the name of that book of Kropotkin's?
I don't know.
Anyway, Kropotkin, one of the anarchist thinkers, wrote a Conquest of Bread.
Yeah.
Wrote a book called Conquest of Bread, and that's where the term BreadTube came from. But most of those people, I mean, if you look at the early ContraPoint stuff or the early Lindsay Ellis or PhilosophyTube stuff.
And ContraPoints is openly trans too.
Yeah. Well, ContraPoints at the beginning was also not openly trans.
Yeah, that's
She started transitioning on YouTube, and has been doing that for a few years.
Yeah.
But her stuff was very funny, very pertinent, and really entertaining. It had really good. Oh God, what's
and
the
she's
word
still
for it?
entertaining. She's still entertaining.
They were. It is attractive content. It is well done. content.
It's very well produced. Very
well produced.
Sort of appealing.
Yeah, and as time has gone by, it's gotten better.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah.
Now, that had an impact and shifted things on YouTube. Since that time, most of those people have gone back to doing what they tend to like doing.
Yeah.
ContraPoint still does things like her recent thing on justice, which was a lot about the Black Lives Matter thing and the Blue Lives Matter movement and police violence and the prison industrial complex.
Yeah.
So she's still doing things that have that kind of content, but a lot of her things have been about gender or transgender stuff. They've been about envy. They've been about more thoughtful, generalized themes. Philosophy Tube has also been generally philosophical things that were much more general. Lindsay Ellis has gone back to mainly movie critique, although she's taken up some issues with J.K. Rowling and her transphobia. The no, you're just
Dede, I'm just showing people. I'm just flicking through this essay so that if people want to. I'm just flicking through it. What it gives. But I'm listening to what you're saying. Yeah, go on.
What I was saying is that basically, BreadTube isn't really an organization of any sort.
No.
It's just some people who were anti-fascist and anti-capitalist at that period of time. And I don't think any of those people put themselves up as Marxist or communist or anything like that.
I think that I'm not sure where American Johnson from Non-Compete, who is
he's not part of BreadTube, I don't think.
No, but I think he has mentioned BreadTube. I'm not sure exactly what he said about it, but I don't. Anyway, whatever. So anyhow,
FD Signifier did a really good.
He was a black YouTube creator.
He's a black creator.
Yeah.
He's very good. I do recommend him. His content is pretty good.
Yeah.
He's part of that black creator group like Khadija Mbawe and T Noir and T1J and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people have have said most of the people
it's
who
buffering
are
a bit.
so-called BreadTube.
Dede, it's buffering a bit, unfortunately. Oh, is it buffering? Oh, it's okay now. Okay. Sorry about this. Go on, Dede. Sorry.
Yeah, Natalie deleted some of her older videos. There's still some of her anti-fascist stuff. There's still some of her anti-capitalist
Anyway, we don't need to go all into it.
Yeah,
but
no, I'm just responding to Kim's comment.
Okay. Yes, sure. So anyway, Natalie,
Natalie's more or less said she's not part of BreadTube.
Yeah.
A lot of those people are kind of disavowed this whole notion of BreadTube.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of the people like T1J and FD Signifier have talked about the fact that black people often don't get included in the algorithms within that same sort of group.
That's right, yeah.
But that's not any decision by those content creators. People like Kat Black has actually worked with Natalie Wynn.
Yeah.
Natalie Wynn's worked with
Natalie
Kat.
Wynn is ContraPoints.
ContraPoints.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's those things, but they basically BreadTube is just sort of a made up term.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Antifa.
Yes.
In the sense that it isn't anything formal. There's no group there. Most of those people have moved on from that earlier thing that happened.
And by the way,
BreadTube doesn't really exist.
By the way, before you go on, Dede, can people hear our commentary okay? Like, we're not too loud, we're not too soft, we're at the same level so that I'm not, bouncing out at everybody and Dede isn't. So just let us know if that's the case. Anyway,
many bots today.
Pardon?
Many bots today.
Right.
Anyway, says,
Dede?
People going yum ong.
Yeah, Dede, don't feed the trolls.
No.
Okay, so listen, Dede, do you want to let's talk about Abigail Thorn and her content. So Dede's watched most of you pretty much watched most of Abigail's content prior to her coming out as trans.
I've watched most of her content.
Yeah.
And her content, like I say, is, I would say she's generally liberal, social democratic in the same way, anti-capitalist in the same way Bernie Sanders is anti-capitalist.
Yeah, which is not great.
which isn't Marxist-Leninist or communist of any sort. It just says that they believe in public health and some support of
They're trying to
public
pretty up
housing and
capitalism, really.
yeah.
So anyway, have you noticed any sort of her pushing any imperialist narratives prior
Basically,
to her coming
I don't think
out?
any of these people talk about imperialism at all.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of them saying anything about
And by the way,
imperialism.
Vaush, who they mention in this article, who is he's got a very large following, and he is really a rad lib imperialist. He pushes imperialist talking points about China. He is dumping on Julian Assange and all that kind of stuff. And he pretends to be a Marxist-Leninist, although he has admitted he hasn't read any books by Marx or anybody else. And he also puts out this very bizarre sort of muddle of he's actually said things like Marx meant for socialism to progress onto a kind of a capitalism, and that's a natural progression. So he's got very little idea of what Marxist-Leninist theory is. He is an imperialist. He is also very misogynist. There's a number of problems with him. And so he's been lumped in with this BreadTube thing, which I actually don't think he is a part of BreadTube.
I don't think he's very similar
that
to,
sort of very loosely.
Certainly not connected to any of those other people.
So
many of those other people are actually friends personally.
Yeah, just quickly, and up until as far as I know, Vaush has been the one thing that I found that was good about him was that he was very trans friendly. That's probably the only thing I find that's good about him. I don't know if he's like that still, but the problem is
we don't watch him.
Pardon?
We don't watch Vaush.
No. I sort of watched him for a little while and then realized what was going on and just didn't bother. But he's got a lot of young people that follow him, and he's really I think he confuses the heck out of them, and they're really, really very, very. It gets a little bit cult-like, on these some of these streams. So anyway, he's been lumped in with these other people. And yet he's probably, as far as I know, the only one who pushes, Dede, the only one who pushes imperialist talking points and does all of what I said and dumping on Julian Assange. The others, I barely say anything particularly, particularly Abigail Thorn. I haven't noticed her saying anything anything political particularly, and she also tends to, since she's come out as a trans woman, she's done very little. She's been very careful because she's got a huge following, and she looks like she's gone into that space that some
the UK is incredibly transphobic.
That some YouTube creators go into, which is the bigger they get, the less the more ineffectual the more sort of they're afraid to upset. I mean, Natalie Wynn has kind of entered that too. They don't want to upset anybody, so they end up kind of not really saying anything very strongly. Like, for example, Abigail Thorn was critiquing Jordan Peterson and was sort of almost apologetic about kind of saying anything. Really, wasn't she, Dede?
Yeah.
Right. So that sort of, even though Jordan Peterson pushes the whole culture wars thing, and he's quite transphobic and all of that. And there's other problems with Jordan Peterson, but anyway, so I haven't noticed her pushing any sort of imperialist talking points. I haven't noticed her even being particularly political about anything. I haven't even heard her so far talking about the vaccine or pushing mandates or pushing the need that there must be a passport or whatever. However,
probably the most political of them all would be Natalie Wynn, who has talked about things like housing and policing and that kind of stuff. But she doesn't talk about imperialism.
No, but you could say that Abigail Thorn is really like just a liberal now, and even kind of leaning towards sort of like she's very she's really wants to be a successful actor. That is her whole thing. Yeah. And at this point, she is an actor
outside of her YouTube thing.
And I think that she has, at this point, is almost like using her YouTube channel as almost like an auditioning thing where she does different kinds of characters and stuff. So for what I see of her, her kind of, you could say, obsession seems to be that she wants to get onto some television shows, probably in movies, and that is her aim. And she's even said that she's going to be dumping YouTube, her channel, at some point, because she's, right into acting. And so she was. So I see, and she's
mainly done theater acting, and I think she's done a little bit of TV stuff.
But her whole thing has been, at this point in particular, is to act. She loves that, and that's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So for this to be an article which, if I may just generalize on this article, Dede.
Yeah.
And you can, because you've read more of it than I have. I've just skimmed through it. I mean, it's not something I wanted to do on our Christmas Day in Australia, is waste time on this, really. And I sort of feel like I was actually, before I say something about this, I was actually saying to Dede about 2 weeks ago, I said, or maybe even 3 weeks ago, I said, I'm waiting for when Max Blumenthal goes into the, starts with some transphobic stuff. Now, but why I say this, I feel this is transphobic, is when you think about what this is about, which is it's about
Shall we go into the article?
Yeah, let's go into the article.
Okay. Basically, the basis of the article is that the government has gone to Abby Thorn and asked her to do kind of a public service ad.
Talk about the
important things, that it's important to be vaccinated and to wear masks and socially distance.
Yeah.
To counteract the push for the anti-vax, no, we're not going to wear masks, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Government is concerned. In the UK, the Omicron variant is rampant. There's thousands of cases.
Yeah. And it'll be like that here in Tasmania and in the rest of Australia too.
Yeah.
Soon.
Well, in Tasmania, we've been open for 10 days and we've got 100 and something cases.
Yeah. It'll soon be all over the place, endemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in the UK, it's really widespread.
Yeah.
And in Tasmania, most people support the health measures.
Yeah.
And are vaccinated. We're something like 91 or 2%.
91%
of the population
people
above 12 is vaccinated.
Hey,
fully
91%
vaccinated.
of people have come forward of their own accord to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any pressure on them to do so. There's been
there
pressure
has been
on
a little bit. There's been some pressure
the health
for health workers.
Yeah.
Now, I think that is valid in the same sense that healthcare workers are told that they need to wash their hands between patients.
And people wear masks in when you're doing barrier nursing and stuff, you wear masks. I mean, this isn't new. And also, anyway, there's precautions that nurses take anyway. And to me, this would have been a no-brainer when I was, as a former nurse, this would have been a no-brainer when there's a pandemic to have a vaccine when you're dealing with people that are that have immunosuppressed issues or they're diabetics or whatever.
As Kim says, I thought Abigail was quite a strange target to go for.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. And this is where I think, Max's concern is anything that supports vaccination or any kind of health measure about COVID seems to be a target for Max Blumenthal at the moment.
Yeah.
And
now there is a problem.
He has hooked in with Caleb Maupin, who is rampantly transphobic.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether Max is transphobic, but the fact that he's picked this as his issue.
Yeah. And also
and highlighted it.
Yeah, but Dede,
talking about
also they could have focused on Vaush if they think that Vaush belonged to this, in quotes, BreadTube. Vaush, except I know he's not being funded by, getting funding by Valent Projects, which is a problematic thing. Yeah. Go on.
He hasn't focused on Vaush because the whole thing is that Abigail has been asked to do this public service ad about COVID.
Yeah.
And so that strikes alarm bells for Max. But I mean, his thing is, he was asked by the government. Abby was asked by the government, and I think the organization that asked her was part of the Royal Institute.
Yeah, it's called Valent Projects.
It was associated with Valent
Projects.
The Valent Project. And the Valent Project it's a PR organization that has been involved in some definitely dicey stuff.
Yes, definitely.
That doesn't mean that Abigail Thorn is now a tool of the CIA trying to oh God, what did he say? Max said it was.
Do you want me to go down? Do you want me to go down?
Infiltrate and corrupt the.
Infiltrate and dismantle. Sorry, that's something else.
Infiltrate and dismantle insurgent forces
from Kenya to Southeast Asia.
This is what. Yeah,
she sounds like the most
Caleb
evil.
Maupin's thing. BreadTube serves imperialism, examining that Caleb Maupin says they're counter gangs deployed by the British and U.S. intelligence to infiltrate and dismantle insurgent forces. Now,
talk about hyperbole.
I wish there was an insurgent force.
Yeah, but I mean, there's
the people who are identified as BreadTube are almost always supporters of Antifa, although they make clear that it's not an organization.
Yeah.
But they're anti-fascist.
Yeah.
That's probably about as political as they get.
Yeah.
They oppose rampant capitalism.
But his problem with Abigail Thorn really is that she is being paid. She's going to be funded to do some
a public service ad.
Public service.
But hang on.
Yeah, go on.
But really, I've read the article, and the thing is, he does this thing of this organization that's funding her is associated with the royals, so it's the aristocrats, forcing views on the public.
Yeah.
And it's through Valent, which is associated with some serious stuff that they did with somebody else in some other context entirely.
The anti-regime
and there is this
change
person working for them who is associated with that person working for some other organization, which is associated with someone else working for a third organization, which is connected somehow to George Soros and Bill Gates.
All they needed to do was throw in the Rothschilds
in Soros
and
conspiracies. And it's like 6 degrees of separation. Well, you've got something like 5 here, which proves that she's really a subversive force, because she's doing an ad saying, please wear masks and socially distance.
Now, we haven't even seen her even doing that yet.
The ad hasn't come
either.
out.
Yeah.
So he's not criticizing the content of the ad.
No.
I very much doubt any kind of public service ad is going to be talking about vaccine mandates.
Yeah, or vaccine passports. I see vaccine passports as problematic, and it's going to exclude a lot of people.
We have issues with those
We have issues with those things. But
Max is against vaccines.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And
he says
it's pretty
he's not,
clear.
but he is.
And somehow he has used this thing to, on Christmas, highlight Abigail Thorn, a trans creator.
Yeah, they haven't mentioned that, by the way, Dede.
She is going to do a PSA that he hasn't seen and isn't criticized and has no actual critique of.
Yeah.
But because it's by government, suddenly all of BreadTube are forces of the CIA and George Soros and God knows what. And it's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah. This would have made, Dede, can I just say, this would have made a lot more sense to me if he'd focused on putting aside the Valent thing, focused on, Vaush, because I see that he's a very problematic character, and I see more and more like the YouTube creator Haas, who promotes patriotic socialism. Sorry?
Bausch didn't say anything about COVID, so
no. But this they're talking about in this sort of messing about with,
Well, he's probably much more likely to be getting money from.
Yeah, he's more likely to be sort of
something.
COINTELPRO stuff, because he's mudding up socialism and trying to be divisive about it. He's dumping on Julian Assange. He's pushing imperialist narratives about China. He is a problematic figure, I see.
Caleb Maupin and Jackson Hinkle, with their patriotic American patriotic socialist stuff, I would guess they're much more likely to be used by the CIA and right-wing forces.
Yeah,
because
whatever.
What the hell is patriotic American socialism?
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about making links with the Trumpers and the MAGA people.
Okay, just quickly, I just wanted to point out the reason we're talking about Jackson Hinkle now is because he did a live stream about this, and he seemed to be totally delighted, because I feel like, I'm sorry, but I feel like he's actually does a lot of dumping on minority groups organizing and stuff, and he's totally into that class reductionist thing, and doesn't seem to think that minority groups have anything to do with class, and that he doesn't recognize the intersectionality of that sort of thing. And Ajama Baraka has criticized so-called leftists that like to dump on IDPOL. They dump on the minority groups organizing and trying to keep that away from class things, and basically it's a racist thing. It's kind of a white supremacist thing too, right? So Jackson Hinkle does that, and Caleb Maupin does that. He also dumps on minority groups organizing, and so there's that. And he also pushes patriotic socialism, which is an oxymoron. It's actually American exceptionalism wrapped in a thin veneer of socialism. There's other problems as well, but there's a common theme here. And Caleb Maupin, I feel there's a common theme, and for them to single out Abigail Thorn when she's probably, I mean, like Dede has said, her, she's probably going to do an ad about wearing a mask and getting a vaccine, but all this other stuff that they seem to be trying to imply that she has something to do, Dede, is sort of like just kind of, it's all this sort of dragging in all these other things that she, I think she's to me just seems very. Yeah, do you want to say something?
I'm just saying that we've got a lot of comments here from Raziel who.
Okay, do you want to address them? I just don't want to spend too much time.
Yeah, sure.
But go on. No, if you want to address them, go ahead, Dede.
Basically, I'm not sure. I think he's.
Or she. Or they.
Well, Raziel is generally a boy's name.
Okay, go on.
Maybe.
What do you want to say, Dede? I haven't been watching.
They're basically talking about endemic, not pandemic. When will the world? Valent is very involved in shady stuff. Yeah, Valent is involved in shady stuff, but that doesn't mean Abigail Thorn, in doing an ad. I mean, as an actor, she probably sees the chance to do an ad and get paid well, to be fine. And if what she's saying is basically wear masks, socially distance, and get vaccinated, I don't think this is a terrible imperialist anything.
No, it's and yes, that
I think
Valent.
She's really apolitical.
Yeah, that Valent, sort of project. Yes, it's definitely got some nefarious stuff going. It's, one of the people involved in that, I think, was doing, trying to promote sort of imperialist narratives about Syria. That's really problematic. But we're just talking about this one. Well, we talked about the whole thing about BreadTube and the loose thing about it, and most of those people don't even associate with that whole thing now, right?
Yeah.
Dede?
No.
And if you look at all their different work content, they don't push imperialist narratives either in their content, right?
No.
So and Abigail Thorn hasn't been pushing imperialist narratives in her content. She still hasn't, and she hasn't even mentioned vaccines yet. She probably will.
If you wanted to talk about vaccines,
yeah, I
would have gone. H Bomber Guy has done an entire video about vaccines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean has done stuff countering Jimmy Dore's thing about vaccines.
Yeah.
So you've got people who are actually actively done stuff about vaccines.
Yeah.
So why focus on Abigail Thorn?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's trans. That's the only reason I can see. Now, Max is in his article. You can see he relies heavily on Caleb Maupin.
Yeah.
Caleb Maupin hates BreadTube. He hates all those people because they have a big viewership, and because they're not real communists and stuff. But they don't pretend to be real communists. No. They don't claim to be any of that stuff. They don't talk about socialism.
Yeah.
They don't.
But also there's trans people.
They were anti-fascist, anti-laissez-faire capitalists. None of them promoted themselves as socialists or as Marxist-Leninists or any of that stuff. So the lack of their ideology, their good Marxist-Leninist ideology, is irrelevant because that's not who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not what they've said they were doing.
No.
Caleb Maupin is transphobic as you know.
Can I give an example of how transphobic?
Sure.
Okay, so I was. This was a couple of years ago when I first kind of thought. Well, before I realized what was going on with his content, I heard him say this about Barack Obama's nanny, who was a trans woman, right? And he said, and Barack Obama had this trans nanny. He said, "What the fuck is up with that?" Right?
Yeah.
Now, when I addressed him privately about that and said, that's very obviously you have real problems with trans people, that you were outraged that he had and thought he was completely weird because he had a trans nanny, right? If that is indeed true, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. And I said, what is your position on trans people? And he said, I don't have a position on it. Well, actually, he does have a position, and he regularly has shots at trans people. Yeah. So he's rabidly, and you can't even have a private conversation with him about it. He completely shuts down. He won't talk about it, and he got really angry with me when I challenged him about that, about his transphobia. He got really angry and was had a bit of a tanty. He didn't have any sort of position. He didn't have any response. I don't even know how conscious it is in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just so appalled by it seems like he's so appalled by the whole thing that he can't even have a coherent response to it. So that's that's where Caleb Maupin is, and he's heavily cited in this article. And the fact that they put Abigail Thorn's picture on the thumbnail of their their video. Well, they've used her picture as this person who, and in the title they've kind of tied her to imperialist, nefarious aims, and you can see that they're also implicitly
and
tying.
all through the article.
And all through the article they're tying her to that as well. And you really have to. This is what TERFs do. Yeah. They actually, instead of just saying I hate trans people, what they do is they find something like, trans women are predators that hang around bathrooms, or trans women are pedophiles, or whatever. Trans women are destroying the lesbians and making them, turning them to being trans men, all this kind of stuff. They don't actually just come out and say what they think, which is I hate trans people. They go in and they use a little a little avenue to sort of like a cowardly way of smearing trans people. And this is what I see when I saw the picture, this image of her with and the royal family and all of this, and I saw the title. What immediately came to mind is someone who's very familiar, and Dede's very familiar with how TERFs, that's trans exclusive radical feminists, and we don't believe they're radical feminists in any way. They're just transphobic women or transphobic people. When I saw that, I just thought, hello, here we go, the exact thing that I expected Max Blumenthal to do, because he's been going down this, like, the whole anti-vaxxer thing is often tied with right-wing stuff. It's in Australia, anti-vaxxers hang out with neo-Nazis and stuff. I'm not saying every anti-vaxxer is doing that, but that is something.
There seems to be a bit of a pipeline.
And there is a pipeline with people that push transphobia.
People get radicalized around the anti-vax thing, and then the next thing they seem to be working with the MAGA thing and the QAnon thing. I mean, it's like the anti-vax demonstrations in Victoria, which were incredibly violent. The anti-vax people were smashing people up. They put a number of police in hospital and that kind of stuff.
There was neo-Nazis in that.
And there were obvious neo-Nazis there. They had Trump flags in Australia.
Anyway, let's not get too much into that.
It's that kind of a movement.
But why?
And it also tends to go together with transphobia, which is another of those pipeline issues. You get people involved in transphobia, and it's a pipeline towards fascism.
And you can, Kaylee Whalens.
Raziel said, so Maupin's just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Maupin is actually very transphobic and also very much against social justice warriors. He's one of these people who does not believe in identity politics. He thinks people who are opposed to racism or homophobia should shut up and all focus on class. He's one of those group of white men who are out there promoting patriotism, American patriotism. And he's accusing other people of being CIA plants.
And to attach to, for Max Blumenthal to attach himself to Caleb Maupin.
Raziel said, it seems odd to select Thorn out of all the other more obviously shady folks on YouTube.
Really.
I don't know whether I would consider her shady.
No.
I don't particularly watch her stuff anymore. I think I used to look at it before. But yes, it's very odd to select her out of all those people. And I can only see it as transphobic. I immediately
thought that. When I saw that, I said to Dede, I said, just look at this. And I looked at the image of her there, and I just thought, hello, he's stepped over into that too. It's like Glenn Greenwald is really transphobic. Dede,
and serious psyops veteran.
Dede,
but he's implying that Abby is a serious psyops veteran.
Listen, Glenn Greenwald is seriously transphobic. And by the way, Max Blumenthal has not said anything about Jimmy Dore defending Carl Rittenhouse, the white supremacist murder, guy who murdered 2 unarmed protesters who were at a BLM protest in Kenosha, and Carl Rittenhouse got off. And Glenn Greenwald was so pleased that he got off. He was almost shedding tears. He was so delighted that Rittenhouse got off. And they never used any context around that at all, right? So Jimmy Dore was defending Carl Rittenhouse, and with no context. Glenn Greenwald was defending Carl Rittenhouse with no context. And Max Blumenthal didn't say anything about Carl Rittenhouse, but he hasn't said anything about as far as I can see, COP26. He's alluded to the fact that he doesn't really quite think that the climate. He's alluded to some sort of there's a question mark over climate crisis.
Assumed climate crisis.
The assumed climate crisis. These are all kind of right-wing talking points the transphobic thing,
and it's disturbing.
The question mark over whether there's a climate crisis.
It's disturbing because we've had a lot of respect for Blumenthal's work on Middle Eastern issues.
Yeah,
and
this is.
I know all of his colleagues don't follow all of his stuff. Aaron Mate has come out very strongly for vaccines.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where Ben Norton's at.
Yeah, but Ben Norton hasn't been retweeting any of this. These sort of he hasn't been retweeting any of this, the constant anti-vax stuff that Max Blumenthal's been putting out, who is his colleague, and he hasn't really retweeted this as far as I can tell. So who knows where he is on that, and it's very hard to contact Ben Norton to find out how he feels about that, and I'm sure that he probably wouldn't want to say anyway.
Chris
because
has interviewed both of them.
Yeah, I've interviewed both Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton. I really like Ben Norton's journalism, and you know, if you follow my channel, that I've often promoted Max Blumenthal and have had great respect for him, and any chance I got, I was promoting the Grayzone, and that's why it's so disturbing for me to see this lurching to the right that he's doing. And it's almost like he's abandoning real his journalist skills when it comes to this. It's like, of all people that he picks out, and of all the issues there are, like there's anti-China propaganda coming out the wazoo. There's all sorts of, I'm not talking he's bringing it out, but there's all sorts of really scary stuff happening about saber rattling towards China. And this is what he selects to talk about a trans woman who he didn't mention was trans, which is also weird because she's openly trans, and it's like they're almost like leaving that.
He does mention she's trans.
Oh, does she? Oh, okay. Well, that's good. But so but all the people, she's an openly trans woman who's probably going to do some ads about masks and vaccines, and apparently that is verboten, and now suddenly she's a CIA operative. Because now I don't know how much she knows about Valent projects. I don't know if she even cares, because to me she's just a liberal. I don't even think she even reads independent journalism. I think she's quite into sort of mainstream now. So I don't even know how aware she is of what Valent projects does. Who knows? If she started promoting anti-imperialist narratives and stuff, or she was right in, I don't know. I would find that very problematic, and we wouldn't be doing this video, because I just think, well, that's really unfortunate. We already know she's, we would be saying, oh yes, I could see that, and we would have written her off already. I don't watch her anymore. I'm not even a fan of Abigail Thorn. So and it's not about I'm not defending her because I'm trans, I believe in trans rights, which I do. Trans rights are human rights. I think it's important that the left stand up for trans people and stand up for minority groups that are vulnerable and being oppressed. And I think there's a big lacking with the left when it comes to trans things. Like I said to Dede, we're probably going to be one of the very few that actually talk about this in a pointing out that this is a transphobic article, and that's really sad. And I said I feel like I would rather eat a bag of hair right now than to be sitting and talking about another fucking stupid thing that these fucking so-called journalists are fucking doing. Seriously and truly. I'm so sick and tired of every time I open the fucking Twitter or something, some other bullshit, somebody's doing some anti-vaxxer bullshit, and leaving journalism behind and conflating mandates and passports and all sorts of shit onto an effective vaccine, and they won't do anything nuanced. They won't say, yes, Big Pharma is bad, but the vaccines actually work, or any of that. I'm so sick of fucking Jimmy Dore and his anti-vaxxer bullshit. It's just one fucking video after another fucking video. And then the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, that was the unsubscribe moment for me, defending a white supremacist murderer, basically. That was the unsubscribe moment for me. And so I'm just sort of basically losing all fucking, as far as the online left goes. Holy crap is all I can say about this. This, and I just thought, this is so typical. I just thought, when is he going to do something transphobic? Voila, here we are today. So anyway,
I think one of the reasons we're doing this is because we've been very concerned with the drift to the right of a lot of these so-called left journalists and left figures. Raziel says we should look into that before we just assume here we're admitting we don't know her work. I actually do know most of her work.
Yes, Dede's watched all. I haven't watched all.
I've watched most of her stuff for years.
Yeah.
I'm not a
That's why we're doing
fan
this
at the moment, but
this is why we're doing this, because
I've seen it.
When I saw
And
this,
I can say it's not supporting imperialism.
No.
So, and we know she's an actor. We know that she's got a job.
Yeah, and she's totally into acting. You know what?
And this isn't exactly CIA stuff.
No, but she honestly and truly, if she got some great gig that was like on EastEnders, she would think it was a great gig if it was EastEnders or something like that. She would be gone. She would dump YouTube and that'd be it. And she'd be as mainstream as you can get. She's right into acting. She wants to be an actor, and she's going to at some point dump her YouTube channel. Yeah. And I have not seen Dede, and I trust Dede when she says that she has seen, and she has. She's watched pretty much all Abigail Thorn's videos before she came out as trans for years. So she knows what the content is, and we've only seen a couple of her live streams. I'm not such a fan of I'm glad she came out and everything, but I'm not such a fan of how frightened she is to kind of actually give her real opinion about anything now. She's just so kind of in some ways
a little bit vanilla.
Yeah, she's just kind of become sort of too sort of careful. Hey? Sorry?
Beige.
Yeah, too careful. So she's basically barely can really give a strong kind of Dede.
Yeah.
She can barely give a strong sort of an opinion about anything in particular.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah, but I think one of the reasons we're picking this up is not so much to defend her.
No.
But because we're very concerned with this drift in the so-called left towards the right, and this grifting to the right, this pushing, the anti-vax narratives for all it's worth.
Yeah.
The anti-vax, because this ties in, this gets you money and viewers who are very right-wing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them out there, and they have money. The transphobic stuff gets you money, and right-wing support,
and left-wing support.
I think with Jackson Hinkle and Haas and Caleb Maupin all doing this patriotic socialist stuff, American patriotic socialism. That's a huge shift to the right. They're trying to make alliances. Nationalists. They're pushing nationalism, making alliances with the MAGA type people.
Yeah.
And they're saying we will, somehow talk them into becoming socialist. I think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And I see this sort of thing, and my concern is in Germany, with the rise of the Nazis. Germany, prior to that, was a very liberal country supporting a great deal of diversity. And the Nazis came along and it shifted. And for that to have shifted, there must have been quite a few people who were kind of on the left who moved to the right.
Yeah.
And I see that same sort of thing happening. The idea of pushing nationalism in the name of socialism is crazy. I mean, the Nazis called it the National Socialist Workers' Party for a reason. It was vehemently anti-communist, but they were trying to sway the unions and that kind of thing, and call on the idea of socialism, but national socialism. And when I see Maupin and Hinkle talking about being nationalists, being American patriots. I mean, you talk about imperialism. To say we are American patriots.
Yeah.
They're not internationalists.
Yeah.
They're not globalists.
No.
They're not for overthrowing the main empire.
Yeah.
We're global hegemon. I mean, that's an insanity.
Yeah, well, to ignore the anyway.
Should we go and look at this Hinkle thing?
I've actually, we did a video about a week ago where it was juxtaposed Jackson Hinkle talking about patriotic socialism and how great it is, Dede.
Yeah.
And juxtapose that with American Johnson from Non-Compete, who's great.
And Luna Oy.
And Luna Oy from her channel. Her name is Luna Nyan, and her channel is Luna Oy. They're great communists, and they give juxtaposing those two things. You can see why this patriotic socialism is such a bad idea. And Jackson Hinkle just recently, his whole Twitter, the cover and his photo changed. It went from him looking like kind of sort of American boy sort of look, and having communist in his tagline on Twitter, to then suddenly looking like he was on like a Fox News kind of in a suit, and he'd taken out communism and replaced it with American patriot. Now, I don't know. To me, that's a really weird thing to do. And all this talk about American patriotism and dumping on identity politics and pretending as if the weaponized identity politics of the Democratic Party is what identity politics is. Minority groups organize for a reason because they're being oppressed, and that is completely inextricably entwined with class issues. And anybody who pretends that it isn't is doing some kind of racist shit, pretending that all these minority groups have nothing to do with class issues and that they should just shut the fuck up and go away. That is what people like commenters like Jackson Hinkle would like, just people that are in minority groups to just fucking go away. Isn't that true, Dede?
Yeah.
To go away. And
which
these
is
happen to be
a form of racism.
Yeah, and these happen to be white cisgendered males who are doing this.
And they'd be really happy if all of the women, the feminists, and the people who are opposing racism just shut up.
Yeah,
that's what they're telling them to do, and focus on, the issues that affect those white people.
Yeah, and I've done a few videos now.
We've done a few things about
Kelly
that.
Whalen, who's a great trans activist, who's a communist, we've done a video on that. It's in a live stream where we talked about her talking about how transphobia is often a pipeline to sort of fascist principles and stuff like that. And we've had had the juxtaposition of EJ and Jackson Hinkle and Karim. Pardon?
Let's go to Hinkle.
Oh yeah, and Karim Bet, who has done a great analysis of what's problematic about trying to separate race and all of that from class. Okay, so I invite people to check that out. Now we're going to have a look at Jackson Hinkle's thing. So let's see.
Merry Christmas, everybody! If you
Merry
celebrate
Christmas.
that thing.
Hang on a second. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Hi, Dan. Hope you're feeling okay, Dan.
So, not too long ago, Caleb Maupin had published a book called BreadTube Serves Imperialism, and it drew a lot of controversy, right? There are all these BreadTubers who were mentioned in it. It was about BreadTube, so all these BreadTubers were mentioned in it, and were freaking out, and they're like, oh my god, he's alleging that we are tied in some capacity to intelligence operations, right? Or PSYOP campaigns, right? And if not that, they're at the least being guided by individuals who are. And it really wasn't that surprising to me. And I thought that Caleb actually did a really good job of exposing a lot of the questionable things that we can look to in Peso Mime, what's up? Yeah, we got to talk about this. Did you read the full article? It's insane. It's insane. The Royals are funding.
Yes, it is insane.
BreadTube, yes. So that's what's happening. Caleb Maupin, theorized in his book BreadTube Serves Imperialism that yes, without a doubt, these nefarious forces are in fact funding or guiding BreadTube commentary, right? That they are doing targeted operations and targeted commentary and trying to combat certain information that is prevailing amongst Marxists.
Now, I mean, this is an incredible stretch.
Yeah.
To go from Abigail Thorn, who's an actor, is doing a public service ad about masks and social distancing, to the Royals are funding you to BreadTube, all of these people, for PSYOPs, CIA talking points.
Yeah, really.
Give me a fucking break.
Yeah. And how about naming some of these people too? Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, this is sort of talk about
rubbish.
Talk about a fucking stretch. But anyway,
Leninist YouTubers or commentators or influencers or anti-imperialist commentators.
Aside from anything else, a lot of these YouTubers at this point, they're
not Marxist-Leninists.
Well, they're not. They've never been.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at somebody like ContraPoints or Lindsay Ellis or H Bomber Guy, and they might do 2 videos a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of propaganda to me.
No.
H Bomber Guy did a thing about Christmas last year.
Yeah. He did a thing about vaccines.
And he's done a thing about vaccines, and I don't think he's done anything since.
No. He barely does any. Lindsay Ellis talks about Disneyland movies and stuff, doesn't she?
She talks about movies, I think. Yeah, and her book.
Yeah, I mean that sounds really, really nefarious. Disneyland
she talks
movies
about gay coding or something in Disney villains.
Yeah. Who else is there? ContraPoints does kind of these lavish things about issues.
But again, I mean, she does maybe 2 a year.
Yeah.
The last one was about envy. The one before that was the one about the police.
Yeah, that's really scary and nefarious.
Yeah, well, I mean, what was she saying about the police? That the police are doing this thing with the Punisher and the Blue Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And linking themselves to fascists.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like real CIA talking points to me.
And none of them say they're Marxist-Leninists. I mean, ContraPoints is a liberal.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, she just wants to, I think, to put a happy
face on.
She's
a social democrat,
yeah.
I think.
And Lindsay Ellis, I don't know what she is, but I mean, she, you know what I mean?
Pretty much
like
the same.
Yeah. Who else is there that they've lumped into BreadTube? But anyway, these people, this is sort of, if it weren't so sad, it'd be funny how he's painting these people, seriously. Yeah. But anyway, and I'm not saying that Valent Projects isn't problematic. It is. It's obviously is, because it's got somebody who's been trying to push imperialist talking points about Syria and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure there are.
That there's any real link to
I'm sure they're funding
Abigail Thorn.
I'm sure
and
they're
certainly not to BreadTube, quote unquote.
Yeah, I'm sure they're funding nefarious stuff. I'm sure there's dark money all over the place. Not just that, but heaps of things. There's dark money coming from left and right everywhere.
Yeah.
Trying to mess things up and destroy the left. But the left seems to be doing a good job of destroying itself at this point.
Yeah.
I can see that we're devolving into. I mean, I'm at this point where I'm losing all interest, even in watching any of these people,
most of this
or even tune.
So-called leftist content.
I'm losing interest in it. Like it's just so.
It's not actual organizing.
No, but it's fucking sad. And there were people who say they're on the left, black leftists who were defending Jimmy Dore defending Kyle Rittenhouse, and I'm thinking, what on earth? Yeah. Have we lost our minds? This is what I was thinking. I could not believe it. Anyway, so I'm losing all interest in. We were wondering whether it was even like this point. I'm pretty much written off these people here.
Yeah.
Because this is, for me, this is the last gasp when you're trying to pretend about, you're trying to dump a whole bunch of stuff, being a CIA operative and all of this on a woman who's a trans woman who's trying to get into acting and is going to do an ad for vaccines.
And then translate that into the royals are funding BreadTube.
Yeah, really.
BreadTube doesn't even exist as a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? You mean the royal family is funding H bomber guy?
Yeah,
Give
really.
Me a fucking break.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love that.
I'm sure he'd love it.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of these people would love some money, some real money. Anyway, I'm like ContraPoints is doing okay, but that's because she's got a huge Patreon.
Yeah.
And she's, like we say, these people, their content is like totally, it's just not, you know what I mean? It's not even remotely.
It certainly doesn't talk about imperialism.
No, it certainly doesn't. If any, like I can guarantee that Jackson Hinkle and Max Blumenthal and probably Caleb Marpin haven't even watched the video. Like you've watched Abigail Thorn's videos. I'd be surprised if they've even watched her videos.
Yeah.
Even know what they're about.
Yeah.
So it's just this is ridiculous to me. You know, I think I don't think it's a great idea to take money from government sort of things, and certainly I hope that I would have hoped she'd looked into what Valent Projects is, but I'd be surprised. She probably got offered this and just said, yeah, sure, I'll do a thing on vaccines and whatever.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not making excuses for her, but I'm just saying this, just like attaching her to all these nefarious things throughout this article is, to me, fucking ridiculous when you know her work.
Yeah.
And when you see the way she talks, I mean, she's all I'm sorry to say, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to say anything tacky, but I mean, she's more obsessed with getting the right bag that isn't a knockoff, right, of a Fenty than she is about, you know, I'm saying she's right into fashion at the moment, isn't she, Dede?
Well, I think she certainly presents.
Yeah, she presents that. Yeah,
that probably are good for her in terms of getting casting,
celebrity and stuff like that. I feel that she wants to be a celebrity and she wants to get into a TV series or something, or a movie, because she's an actor. She's an actor, and so she's very much involved in how she looks, right?
Yeah.
Dede? And how she presents in her videos, and I think her videos. I won't
criticize her that much about that kind of stuff, but
I don't think it's a criticism.
Like, I really don't. She is not political.
Dede, yeah, but I'm just saying she's not political, really. Yeah. She's more interested in getting acting jobs, right? And that's what it looks like to me, right?
Yeah.
And
I think she does thought pieces.
Yeah.
She's done some things about justice and about. Yeah, I think she did some stuff about Amy Coney Barrett.
Sure.
A few things like that. I mean.
Anyway, what I'm trying to say is
liberal left wing kind.
What I'm trying to say is she's very much
stuff.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is she's very much focused on acting. She says that's the love of her life is acting.
That's what
right?
she wants to do.
Well, she is an actor and she wants to do more of it. And what I'm saying is,
it's just like Lindsay Ellis focuses on film criticism.
What I'm saying is,
she does do other stuff, but
what I'm saying is though that her appearance is very important to acting. Is what I'm saying, Dede. You know how it's very superficial, the whole acting thing in people's appearances. That's why I'm saying she's very much into fashion. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's not putting her down. That's just something that I think is something that, you know, actors have to be. They're a product. Their body and the way they look is a product, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we'll continue on with Jackson Hinkle.
Or influencers online, Twitter users, whatever. And for a while, you know, there was never, I saw someone commenting about this, for a while there was never anyone who was really brave enough to call out the fact that this is what BreadTube was doing and has been doing. And it really wasn't until, as far as I know, Caleb Maupin, who's, you know, he was the first person who started to really hit the nail on the head and be like, yo, all this stuff is insane. What the fuck is going on? Like, we need to talk about this and we need to do something about this, right? Because when you have someone like Caleb
Well, I mean, really, what on earth is so-called BreadTube saying or doing? You know, like BreadTube, what is it? BreadTube is these people who have their own interests, and I don't see them saying anything that the CIA would be particularly interested in having them say.
Yeah.
I mean, really? The CIA is interested in film analysis?
Yeah. And Vaush isn't a part of BreadTube, Dede.
What?
Vaush isn't a part of BreadTube, and he's not getting any money from Valent Projects. But he's the most problematic for me.
Well, Vaush is problematic.
And Haas,
but I
Infrared.
lump Vaush in really more with these debate pros.
Yeah, sure.
They're all kind of gamers who make their money on Twitch.
And Infrared.
And are into this very aggressive, very masculine debate stuff.
Yeah.
Of, I'm the winner, I'm stronger than anybody, I'm the best.
Yeah,
all this sort of very alpha male garbage.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on with this, because I don't want to spend too much time on it.
I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Who is just speaking facts about a country like China, providing, of course, as needed, critical analysis of a ongoing socialist project, ruthless criticism, while still recognizing their victories. And then for doing that, someone like Vaush, who we debated on this, responded by calling him a Nazi. Well, that kind of sparks a lot of red flags for me, And then, of course, you've had all of these subsequent red flags. Vaush and other BreadTubers saying things like Julian Assange should be extradited to the United States. And
who are these other BreadTubers? Because it's certainly not those people we've mentioned. Who are they?
Yeah.
Who is he talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like him to kind of say who they are. I'm not defending
Vaush
BreadTube. I'm just saying let's be a little bit clear about who he's talking about, because it certainly isn't those people.
And I don't think Vaush has any relation to those people. I mean, when people talk about BreadTube in the media, when the New Yorker or the Conversation or the Huffington Post talks about BreadTube, they talk about Ellis and ContraPoints and Philosophy Tube and H-Bomber Guy. They're all kind of friends. They have similar content. Vaush doesn't have similar content.
No, he's not
an associate of those people.
No.
He's more associated with Hinkle and Haas.
No, he's not. Hinkle doesn't like Vaush because
they've
had debates, and Vaush has called him a Nazi.
They do the same kind of stuff.
Huh?
They do the same kind of
they do the same kind of stuff.
It's
stuff. Just constant political.
They just are opponents in some way, but it's very much that.
But
same masculine.
Hinkle doesn't seem to be an opponent of Infrared, who has had racist attacks on Luna Nguyen from Luna Oi channel, and she's a Vietnamese communist. He's also promoting that patriotic socialism, which I just think is just national. It's just American exceptionalism, nationalism with a thin veneer of socialism. It's not. This is a really problematic thing, and they will not recognize that it's problematic, and will not acknowledge it's problematic. Anyway,
held in a CIA black site where he's tortured and killed.
Oh my, Herb!
He should stay in Afghanistan.
Oh, Herb, thank you so much for that kind donation. We rarely get donations, and that's very kind of you. Yeah. So Merry Christmas to you, and Merry Christmas to everybody, or Happy Holidays. This is not the way we wanted
really
to spend
donations much. Thanks for that.
Yes, we weren't. We really. I felt like I'd rather eat a bag of hair than talk about this on Christmas Day. I mean, it's the end of Christmas. Well, it's actually gone into Boxing Day now.
We'll probably do a live stream that's fun for all of the shut-ins and orphans and the people kind of from one fortress of solitude to another.
Yes.
All the people who
that's what we wanted to do. We actually wanted for this to be a nice.
A bit of an orphan's Christmas thing. That's
a Christmas thing.
But when this came along.
Yeah, this came along, and we didn't think that anybody was going to talk about the transphobic angle of this. Focusing on Abigail Thorn. So we thought we're probably going to be one of the very few that actually do a video on this, and I just don't want this to slip under the radar, because this is an undermining and a sort of a tainting of trans people. Once again, the TERFs like to do this, and this is, for me, I see this as an alignment with TERF ambitions.
It's just an upping of the right-wing stuff from the anti-vax thing to include a little bit of transphobia.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, let's watch some more of this.
Merry Christmas,
So thanks, Herb, for that. That's very kind.
Stand to further advance feminist issues, or we should further support Jaish al-Islam in Syria. This is something that like Dylan Burns regularly repeats. We should support Jaish al-Islam in Syria, or we should support the occupation that's being facilitated by the United States and the Kurds in the northeast of Syria. You get the idea. We should lead a Western coup against Vladimir Putin of Russia to install a.
Yeah, is he talking about Vaush now? Because Vaush might say
he's
those
talking
things.
About Vaush.
Okay, well, that's Vaush. That's not those other people.
More like
and Vaush isn't getting.
And Vaush isn't an associate of those other people.
No, and also who knows what's going on? Like Vaush
is suspect.
Vaush is definitely suspect, and I've talked about him before on this channel.
Yeah.
He's definitely suspect, so yes, criticize him all you want as long as it's real. Yeah. But dragging these other people into that, they're not associates.
Yeah.
Favorable leader in the country to Western interests. These are all the things that they say, and they don't fall out of line with what the CIA and the State Department would want. So let's.
Is he talking about Vaush still, or is he bringing them all in?
Yeah, he's talking about Vaush. Well, he's talking about Vaush and saying all of BreadTube.
Yeah.
Vaush is typical of all of BreadTube. Where, I'm sorry, Vaush is like completely different than most of these people who get called BreadTube.
They've all branched off and they're doing their own thing. The whole, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but none of those people did the sort of thing Vaush does.
No,
they don't have that kind of a show.
No.
They don't do debate things. They do essays.
Sure.
All of those so-called BreadTube people do video essays. About various subjects.
Yeah, go and have a look.
They've been doing them about general sort of broader subjects like cringe or envy or something like that.
Yeah, this is why it's so funny, really. It's sad.
To say it's at best a little bit sus. It's a little bit sus, right? Well, it just so happens that today, as I was in the grocery store with my dad, I received a message about an interesting article that proves everything that Caleb Maupin had to say.
It proves it, Dede. It proves it. By the way, the other day Jackson Hinkle put on his Twitter, he said, all of my haters are either ugly or they're or they're anime. This is, I mean, I'm not sure if he's trying to take a leaf out of Haas's book and try and insult people and thinks that's going to get more followers. But I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I just find him a interesting character.
Well, I mean, Raziel says Vaush is beyond suspect. Yes, Vaush is absolutely beyond suspect. Yeah. So is freaking Jackson Hinkle.
He's a little bit, so is Haas. I'm finding.
So is Caleb Maupin. They're all beyond suspect.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about beyond suspect. I'd say
they're all highly suspect at very least.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels very grifty to me. Very, very, Anyway.
And you look at a lot of the actual socialists.
And look at the delight he's taking in this too. The delight of because he hates.
But this thing of taking Vaush and extending that to, well, therefore all of BreadTube is just the same.
Yes. Yeah.
BreadTube doesn't even really exist.
No, it doesn't even really exist. This is why it's so bizarre. It's like making out like Antifa is some real organization where you have a membership card and everything. It's not. This is sort of strange and the delight though that he takes in and this is why just the delight he takes in all of this too. He's actually, there's something he says about Andrea Voronsky, who is a social democrat who tends to focus on electoral politics and she did a debate with Jackson Hinkle, where he was sort of basically trying to say that, well, he was basically trying to, dump on identity politics and, basically saying it has nothing to do with class and we should just ignore it. And there's something he says about her, and I think it's interesting. What?
Michael says, Dede,
she's
do you
a trans-
not like frat bros like Jackson?
Anyway,
no, I'm not a fan.
Anyway, Andrea Vronsky's a trans woman, so just listen out for that.
Caleb Maupin was right about BreadTube and who it serves. The Grayzone has documents to prove all of this. So I want to show it to you because this article is absolutely mind-blowing. And if you haven't retweeted this yet, go hop off the stream for a second. Go retweet this. This blew my
Retweet it before you even read it. That's what I say.
mind when I read the article. All right, and we're gonna go through it right now.
Because Maupin said so.
So Max sent me this. In case anyone doubted Caleb Maupin's hypothesis that BreadTube was a pseudo-socialist vehicle aimed at undermining anti-establishment forces. For those of you who don't know, BreadTube is like a shit-lib, loosely defined media collective of like YouTubers and streamers, both on YouTube and Twitch. In case anyone doubted Caleb Maupin's hypothesis that BreadTube was a pseudo-socialist vehicle aimed at undermining anti-establishment forces and that intelligence operatives were giving its influencers a nudge behind the scenes, we've got the documents. The Grayzone reports leaked files expose Syria PsyOps veteran astroturfing BreadTube star to counter critics of government COVID restrictions.
Okay. I actually responded to this on Twitter when he put that out. We've got the documents. What documents do you have? First, you're talking about BreadTube. How are they undermining anti-establishment forces?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
What are they doing that's undermining that?
Yeah.
You've got documents. You've got a document that says Abby Thorn is doing an ad, a public service ad about COVID stuff. Wear masks, socially distance, get vaccine because it's important. Vaccines aren't the end of the world. They're not a trap by Bill Gates. They're not 5G, something that's going to change your genetics and some other bullshit.
Microchips and all of that. And yes, Bill Gates is very problematic. Big Pharma is very problematic and all of that. But it doesn't mean
Bottom line, vaccines work.
Yeah, vaccines work. They keep people out of ICU. Anyway, let's keep going.
Kit Clarenberg, who's been doing some great reporting at the Grayzone, and Max Blumenthal on how UK state-backed PSYOP pros are bringing home the tactics they owned in Syria during the Syrian dirty war. All right? This is crazy stuff. And, Caleb Maupin responded, said, I was right about BreadTube and who serves it. The Grayzone has documents to prove it. Let's take a look.
And let's remember,
I'd like to see some document that links any BreadTuber to anything about Syria.
Yeah.
As far as I know, none of them have said anything about Syria or about imperialism generally.
Dede has watched all these people for quite some time, haven't you, Dede?
Yeah, generally.
Yeah. So she has a pretty good, and I'd say that he probably couldn't name one thing that ContraPoints or Abigail Thorn has done, or Lindsay
they've
Ellis.
had goes at Ben Shapiro. They've had goes at what's his name, the psychologist,
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
They've had goes at J.K. Rowling. I don't know. They certainly haven't talked about imperialism at all.
This is Dede, but this is why I sort of feel that the delight that he's taking in lumping them all together and making out like there's some big CIA psyops, all of them, right?
Yeah.
Lindsay Ellis, who talks about Disney films and books, right? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
That is because they're all trans-friendly, a lot of them, Dede.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all trans-friendly, and they're all either trans or they're trans-friendly, right? And they often they're fairly friendly with one another, right?
Yeah.
And this is sort of
they're generally anti-racist. Yeah. They believe in public health.
But the common denominator, Dede, is that they're very trans-friendly or they're trans. And I feel like a lot of this great delight that he's taking in trying to lump them all together as if it's some big CIA psyops is that
Yeah.
they want.
I don't think they're especially a trans group or especially trans friendly. I think they do defend trans people because they see them as particular targets.
Sure.
I think they're basically into social justice.
Yeah.
And would defend any minority group.
Well, this is the feeling I get. Like ContraPoints backs up Kat Black, who's also a black trans woman. ContraPoints has been friendly with Lindsay Ellis. There's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's this sort of camaraderie to some extent.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But that's the impression that I've gotten.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'd say that's true.
Yeah. So I feel like there's this sort of like just kind of a sort of a loathing hatred of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel there's this such great delight in talking about this on behalf of Jackson Hinkle, is because they have this kind of. I've never heard him say one positive thing about trans people, Dede.
No.
I've never heard, and all I've heard from Caleb Marpin is transphobic stuff.
Yeah.
And I've tried to engage him on this privately,
like Rogan,
and he won't even. Pardon?
Just like Joe Rogan.
Just like Joe Rogan, yeah. Then Glenn Greenwald is the same. He's overtly transphobic now, and you couldn't. He would never think about interviewing a trans person to talk about it.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan wouldn't do that either. Really, it's just that kind of thing. There's a little group of mostly straight, white, cisgendered, heterosexual men who all seem to have a real issue with trans women. They don't really talk about trans men. No. They talk about trans women, and they like to find things like this and put her face up on a thumbnail or on an image and tie her
about Syria dirty wars
and tie her to all the
CIA and nonsense.
A whole bunch of stuff in this article that she's had nothing to do with, has said nothing about so far. No imperialist stuff. In fact, she's become fairly almost for me. Just not really talking about politics really at all. She's afraid to upset people, and she wants to keep in the good graces of YouTube. So she's not going to be talking about imperialism, that's for sure. Because if you're talking about imperialism on YouTube, it really affects the algorithms. Really don't like it.
Yeah.
So this to me sort of. Anyway, we've made the point a few times, but this just sort of like, this is just what this feels to me. A bunch of white, cisgendered, straight men who are threatened by the whole trans thing, and they, just like the TERFs, they like to use some issue to try and indirectly smear trans people. The TERFs do it, and these people are kind of aligning with TERFs by doing this.
Look at this article, all right? And for those of you who don't know, this is philosophy.
I think a bit of it is jealousy too. I think they're jealous of the fact that these people, H Bomber Guy and ContraPoints and stuff, have a big following, and they're fairly independent.
Yeah,
they have a lot of Patreon supporters, and they don't need to be always on.
But they're actually also, because they're not talking about Dede.
Yeah.
Because they're not talking about imperialism and things like that the algorithms don't like, and that advertisers don't like. That's why, in some ways, that's why their channels do so well, because they're very careful to not do issues that Google is just like a propaganda arm of the U.S. national security state. So, if you're doing something that they don't like on YouTube, it really, really affects. I mean, you know what I mean? So,
and you can see. I mean, here we have Philosophy Tube's thing, violence and protest.
Yeah.
She talks about that. She talks about Islamophobia, and this is sort of some of the stuff she does talk about that is a bit political, but I mean, it's liberal politics.
Yeah. And has Max Blumenthal critiqued? Has
a belief in diversity and a belief in equality.
Has Max Blumenthal or Jimmy Dore critiqued Tulsi Gabbard on her major sort of grift to the right? I mean, the woman is putting out all sorts of Islamophobic things, all sorts of anti-trans stuff. She's just really going for it and praising the military and drone wars are great, and all this sort of stuff. Like, it's just getting more and more and
No,
more. Has anybody critiqued?
She is into imperialism.
She is. Has anybody critiqued her? For Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal? No. So this is what, when I see selective stuff that is left out.
She proudly talks about having recently been in Africa with the army.
I didn't hear Max Blumenthal say anything about Rittenhouse at all. Maybe somebody else in the chat has heard him say something, but I never heard anything.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? That is actually a big deal, because that actually gave license now to right-wingers to kill unarmed leftist protesters and get away with it. That's what that's opened up. Now that is a big deal, and Max Blumenthal, I don't remember him saying anything. Glenn Greenwald defended Rittenhouse and almost cried when he got off. I mean, it was so pathetic. And Jimmy Dore has defended Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean,
and ever since he's been on the anti-vax
and you would think
Max Blumenthal's been Jimmy Dore's best friend.
Yes.
And most frequent guest.
Yes. And I'm, it's sort of like, I mean, that to me is that is amazing to me. Like, I was gobsmacked when that was going on, and yet that none of them have said anything about Tulsi Gabbard at all.
Yeah.
So what the fuck does that say? So anyway.
YouTube, 1.08 million subscribers, huge platform. Videos get nearly 1 million views, if not more. Very, very big YouTuber, I believe.
Yeah, how about telling us, Jackson, what her videos are about? Like, I bet you haven't watched one of them. And also the titles, Food, Beauty, and Mind. Yeah, that's something real nefarious, Dede.
Yeah.
I'm sure the CIA's clapping their hands over that one.
Yeah. UK-based YouTuber.
Anyway, it's just fucking ridiculous when you know the sort of content she's had, Dede.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, huge, influence from this.
Huge influence, Jackson.
The single YouTuber here, and what's really interesting about this is like.
Actually, she doesn't hold a candle to some of the makeup people.
What's that?
She doesn't hold a candle to some of the YouTubers who talk about makeup.
No.
Photography.
Yeah.
And you have YouTubers like PhilosophyTube, for example, who rarely put out content. Like every few months, PhilosophyTube will put out like a video or something like that, and they get thousands and thousands of subscribers every single day on their channel.
And he's jealous.
Yeah, and he's jealous. He's also, and what are they, Jackson? What exactly? Have a look at what she's talking about, and what she doesn't say, which she knows how the algorithms work, which is something that he talks about all the time. He says he tries to work the algorithms, and one way he does that is to continually say, and continually do this debate bros stuff, and then critique Vaush, and then call Vaush something or other, and then Vaush comes back at him, and he's working the algorithms all the time.
Yeah.
Individuals like, I'm not going to use me as an example, but say the Grayzone, who go live or post very in-depth, well-produced videos multiple times a week, usually.
Hello? The Grayzone talks about imperialism most of the time. Why? So that's exactly something that Google loathes, right?
Yeah.
Google will clamp down on anything that's about Palestine or anything that is going against U.S. national security state talking points. That's why the Grayzone doesn't get that kind of thing. Why does PhilosophyTube get so many? Because she's very careful not to do anything that's too controversial. I mean,
she has very good production values.
Yeah, very good production. She's got a lot of Patreon
video
people.
Essays that take months to do. Jujubu has said she's very left.
Who's very left?
PhilosophyTube, Abby. Abby is very left.
She used to be.
Know.
No, I didn't even know she used to be.
When we're talking about left, there people like Caleb Maupin is criticizing her because she doesn't talk about Marxist Leninism or communism.
Yeah.
She doesn't do that. We've talked about the fact that she is she's left in that sense of being anti-laissez-faire capitalism, being concerned with things like housing,
She's a social
being
democrat.
concerned with things like Islamophobia, about diversity in general. She's very liberal in that sense.
She's not a
She's very
socialist.
strongly social democratic.
She's not a socialist, though, Dede. She's
No, I wouldn't
I
say
think
she
she's
is.
quite a capitalist now, really.
Well, I don't know. That's a personal thing. She's certainly making money, but that's...
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like she's,
Yeah.
I think
I
those
think
days...
we don't know her that well, so...
No, but that's not the feeling I get from her at all.
Well, the thing is,
Now,
she's not pushing for revolution
No.
or anything like that. She's not pushing Marxist-Leninism or Maoism
and anyway...
or anarchy or any of that stuff, really.
And anyway, like, okay, so they're not pushing communism and socialism. What, does that make them CIA operatives? I don't... Dede?
Yeah.
You're going to have to listen to me and
Yeah.
stop reading the chat. Anyway, so, I don't... You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean... Because they're not pushing Marxist-Leninist stuff doesn't mean that suddenly they've become CIA operatives. Vaush is a problem, but he's...
Vaush is a problem.
Yeah. But anyway...
Well, and I think Jackson Hinkle is a problem.
Yeah, I think Jackson Hinkle at this stage is a problem, yeah. He's got a whole different problem, which is this patriotic socialism,
The
American
nationalism
patriotism.
is just disgusting.
Yeah, the nationalist stuff. Anyway,
And what they get suppressed in the YouTube algorithm. Sometimes they lose subscribers. I mean, it's really insane how the whole algorithm works, But let's get into it.
I'm not sure how much we're going to play of him. I mean, to be honest, I'm really...
It's
I'm
just
really,
more of the same, really.
Yeah, it's more of the same. But I want him to come to this point where he says something about Andrea Voronsky, that trans woman, and what he says after he talks about her.
So this is the article right here. Valence Projects is one of the main characters in this article. BreadTube.
Yeah. Anyway,
Andrea Voronsky.
What he says about Andrea Voronsky, he says some weird thing about her being...
She debated him, and
she had
him for dinner.
Yeah, she had him for dinner, and he didn't like it.
It's an interesting debate. Watch it on her channel.
Yeah, he didn't like it at all. She's a trans woman. I'm not a fan of her channel.
She has a better understanding of Marxism than he does.
Yeah, exactly. And she had him for dinner, and he didn't like it. And then, but when he says, he brings her into this conversation and says, it's almost like she's genetically manipulating, like she talked about influencing people. And he said, it's almost like she's genetically manipulating things. And I thought, where the hell did you come up with that? Like, it was just weird. Anyhow, you can watch his... I think we've spent enough time on him. I'm so tired of him now. I mean, I feel like, to be really frank with you, I feel there's some people now that I've written off, and I can't be bothered. I honestly can't be bothered even. At this point, I can't even be bothered talking about them anymore, because as far as I'm concerned, the grift is really real, and I think it's only going to get worse. Yeah. And I think I have to say I'm kind of disgusted with the quote unquote journalism that Max Blumenthal's been doing about vaccines and about this. This is really sloppy,
and
because
this just
it's pinning
feels like a grift towards
and it's just
transphobia. To me.
Exactly. And that was something I was predicting. I said to Dede, I'm sure that he's going to be doing something trans thing, and then I looked at it this morning and I thought, you've got to be fucking kidding me. So, that's sort of like, it's so predictable that he would do that now. Yeah. And that tells me a lot about, and it doesn't mean, and I don't mean that it's wrong to criticize a trans person, and that if you criticize a trans person, then you must be transphobic. I'm not talking about that at all. It's like I criticize Glenn Greenwald all the time, and he's gay, and I'm queer, and I don't care that he's gay. He's been pushing right-wing talking points, and he's, been defending Kyle Rittenhouse, and he's been putting out transphobic stuff, and it's just getting worse and worse with him. Like Abby Martin said the other day on her Media Roots podcast, she said, I used to greatly admire Glenn Greenwald, and now I think he's disgusting. She literally used that word disgusting, and I have to be honest and say I do as well. And this is from someone who's a vegan. I'm vegan, and I think that he might be vegan, but I don't give a shit that he's. I'm glad he's vegan, in that way. But I don't give a shit that he's, even though there's so rare to hear any leftist being vegan. But the fact that he's been putting out these awful and these transphobic things. It's just appalling, the sort of transphobic shit he's been putting out.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite happy to criticize trans people
like
Blair White, who deserve criticism.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a
but Abby Thorn is not one of those people.
If Vaush was a trans person, right? Unless I wouldn't be focusing on the fact he's trans. I'd just be criticizing like I do because he's been putting out imperialist talking points and dumping on Julian Assange, right? He's not trans, but I'm just saying. I don't care. I'm not saying I don't believe in holding back on people because they're from a minority group if they're doing fucking, sort of weird and what I think is bad faith stuff. And so, I used to be a huge fan of Max Blumenthal's journalism, and now I'm so fucking disappointed in him, to say the least, what he's been doing. It almost turns my stomach even to see him. I'm sorry to say this, but even to see his face at the moment makes me, it's stomach turning. I'm sorry, because it's like, I just think, what shit is he going to say next? It's just, you know what I mean, Dede?
Yeah.
What is he going to come up with next?
Yeah.
That's what, it's sort of stomach turning. The sort of stuff that they're coming out with now.
Yeah.
And yet he does really good anti-imperialist journalism. But sometimes you have to think, with the sort of stretches he's making with this Abigail Thorn stuff, you sometimes wonder, what else is he doing with these other stories? Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that, if you've ever watched Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, and there's this character on there, 7 of 9. She's a Borg, and she actually there was this particular episode where she was getting all this information into her node in her head, and she was overloaded with information, and she started creating this elaborate story about
conspiracies that this is connected to this.
This is connected to that, and this is that, and basically then thought that everybody was trying to do a mutiny on board the Voyager, and even thought the captain was part of this elaborate plan with the caretaker and all this kind of stuff. And it just reminds me of that. It's like they're drawing all these different things together and pinning it on Abigail Thorn, and I just think, oh my God, it just made us laugh, because it just reminds us of that.
All of a sudden we're talking about Abigail Thorn, and then it's George Soros and the CIA, and
all they need is the Rothschilds.
All of BreadTube is corrupting the left, and it's like, what?
Yes, and when you think about who these actual people are, like Lindsay Ellis doing book reviews and talking about Disney whatever films and stuff, and musicals. She does do a lot. She did a breakdown of Phantom of the Opera or something. You know what I mean? And you think, where is this coming from? Because I don't see it.
Yeah.
I've yet to see it.
Yeah.
So this is sort of,
where's
to
the
me,
capitalist narrative in her analysis of the Phantom of the Opera?
Yes. I'm thinking, is there little cryptic
like,
notes in there somewhere?
It's not there.
Is it like, reversing the Beatles record and hearing something about the devil or something? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, where is it some cryptic little thing that we don't know about?
If you listen to it backwards on slow speed, you'll hear it.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll just leave. I think we might leave it there. There's a lot in the article, and but when you read it through, you sort of and you see.
If you read it critically, it's like the links don't make any real sense when you realize all it is Abby Thorn doing a PSA. About wearing masks and social distancing and getting a vaccine.
Yeah.
Now,
and I don't think
getting a vaccine, that's a problem for Max Blumenthal.
Yeah. And I don't know if she's going to talk about mandates and passports. I don't know. Probably not. But
you wouldn't in a PSA.
Yeah. But it's
too controversial.
Anybody
you sit there and talk about getting tested and doing the right thing.
Yeah. Anybody who's sensitive to sort of pushing transphobia without actually overtly saying I hate trans people. Anybody who's sensitive to that can see this in this particular thing, and can see it in
Yeah.
with J.K. Rowling, and
a
can
couple
see
of
it with
people have said, why single out Abby Thorn?
yeah,
And that's exactly the point.
Joe Rogan, yeah. Why single out her? Yeah, and that sort of that is, you know, I just immediately, that was something that I thought of, and I'm not a fan of Abigail Thorn, and you know, the whole thing to me is really unfortunate, and I think there's going to be more of that, and it's probably going to be more overt, you know, so and I don't know what the other author, Kit Clarendon or whatever, I don't think he's transphobic. Who knows?
I think he's done a lot more work on what's its name, Valence, the Valence Project.
Yeah, and that is a problem. That
is a real issue.
Valent projects is a problem. It's a real problem, and it's you know, and that would definitely have psyops happening.
If you're going to say Abby Thorn is doing the job of the CIA, you have to give some evidence of what job she's actually doing.
Exactly.
And if you say, and because she belongs to BreadTube, and she's getting some connection with this, therefore all of BreadTube is an agent of the CIA. You know, give me a break.
I mean, they should do a whole thing on Vaush. That would, and that's not being and he's not being funded by Valent Projects. But I'm sure there's some dark money.
If they wanted to do a thing about, you know, they should do something on these nationalist socialists.
Sure, but they're not going to do that because they're all kind of seem to be buddies and all holding hands.
No, he Caleb Maupin's story dovetails with his own story. And
who are we talking about now? Jackson Hinkle. Max Blumenthal. Yeah. No, but I mean,
and Jackson Hinkle is a big buddy of Caleb Maupin.
Sure.
They sit there in the same house.
They what? No, no. Jackson Hinkle is a buddy of Haas.
Of Haas.
Infrared. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what his association with Caleb Maupin is, but anyway,
they were happy.
They're all happy to get on board with this. What I see is implicitly transphobic. Anyway, let's have a look at the chat and just have a look at. Can you see the chat, Dede?
Yeah, I can see the chat.
Okay, and then we might say good night. And we're sorry once again that we're talking about this issue. Like I say, we didn't feel like talking about this, but we felt like it was something that was important to talk about. Not in the defense of Abigail Thorn or anything, but something that is a problem that is on the left that you know, you see again and again, and this is something TERFs do as well. But anyway, so
Holly was just saying, you know, that they talk about the vaccine. The vaccine is murder, you know. And sure, there are side effects. There are side effects to any drug. Any drug. Aspirin.
Any drug.
There's, you know. And this number of side effects, the number of people who've had actual verifiable side effects is actually very small, considering the over 1 billion doses of vaccines that have gone out. Now, what we do know is that people who've been vaccinated are much less likely to end up in hospital and ICU. It doesn't mean nobody does, but you're much less likely to do so.
But he's
if you've
okay.
been vaccinated.
But Dede, Max Blumenthal's fine with monoclonal antibodies, and that's by Big Pharma. And is he concerned about the side effects of that?
He's not consistent with any of that.
No, he's not. You know, he's telling people to go and get COVID, and then
Big Pharma. Big Pharma is doing vaccines. It's all evil.
He's into herd immunity, right?
Monoclonal antibodies aren't as good as vaccines.
No.
First off, they're only one antibody, and a vaccine gives you polyclonal antibodies. And vaccines, you generate your own antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies is someone else's, you're given someone else's antibody. And so your immune system never really develops its own antibodies.
Anyway, he was pushing herd immunity all this time, and herd immunity didn't work for 6 million people who are now dead, and a lot of
8 million.
What?
It's 8 million, isn't it?
Is it 8 million? Oh, yeah. And he's also not, doesn't seem to mention that the patents, that there are people in the global south were crying out for vaccines. He's never mentioned that. And also that there's a lot of there's a lot of black people have disproportionately died from COVID. None of those things is sort of like seem to be an issue for him. Hey, Dede.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem to care particularly about causing vaccine hesitancy. Anyway, but I see some positive thing possibly, Dede, with the Omicron, which seems to have milder symptoms. I don't know if that is all the time with unvaxxed people, but with vaxxed people it seems to have milder symptoms of like runny nose, headache and stuff like that. And it's looking like it could be, according to, say, John Campbell and some others, that it could be coming to the end of the pandemic because it's become a sort of...
It appears to be
less virulent, but it's very contagious.
Some doubt it may just be a function of the fact that a lot of people are either vaccinated or have had COVID.
Yeah.
And so they have some immune response.
Yeah. So anyway, let's hope that I'm so sick of this fucking COVID and hearing about COVID and hearing about the anti-vaxxers and all this. I'm so sick of it. I'll be so glad when it comes to the point that we don't have to talk about this anymore and we don't have to listen to these so-called journalists going on and on and on and on and, and conflating stuff and cherry-picking things and making up stuff, journalist-free fucking stuff. I'd be so glad when that comes to an end, Dede.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's. Is there anything you wanted to say? Because we might wrap it up now.
I think that's it.
Yeah. We wanted to do a nice kind of Christmas hanging out.
We'll do it
try
tomorrow.
We'll try and do that tomorrow.
We'll
which
do
I guess
an orphan Christmas.
Yeah, which I guess is the end
chat.
of. Which is the end of U.S. Christmas Day. We've already had Christmas Day. It's gone into Boxing Day now. So anyway,
we can do a Boxing Day.
Thank you so much for
tomorrow.
What?
We can do Boxing Day for America tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, won't they still be on Christmas Day when we? Oh, it depends on.
I think they're in Christmas now.
Christmas, yeah. So I'm not sure. Tomorrow around Dede.
Yeah.
Tomorrow around 12 noon. That's like 8 p.m. on Christmas Day, I think. Yeah. So maybe we'll be back then. And anyhow, but thanks so much for watching. I hope this made sense.
Yeah.
We're not really into.
Thanks, Holly. Dan,
we're not into mandates and passports, Herb, really, but we don't like.
Raziel.
What was that?
I'm just saying.
Oh yeah.
Thank
you so much, Holly and Dan and Michael
and Raziel and
Raziel and everybody. It's thanks so much for joining, and we will hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow. I hope you have a lovely day, whatever you're doing. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope that's really good. I hope one day that it's a vegan Christmas for everyone because animals are not our property; they're not our resources, and we don't need to celebrate over death and violence. So hopefully that will be something that happens. And you know that I like to mention veganism if I can in any live stream, and that's because it's very important to us, to Dede and I. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and
Kim,
yes, have a great day, and thanks so much, Herb, for that kind donation. That's very kind of you.
And
okay.
Jujubu. Yeah.
What's that? And Jujubu. Yeah. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you in about 12 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Or less. Okay then, bye for now.
Okay, Kim, Holly.
Okay, much love.
Dan.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.